Am I crazy or have the ice raids slowed way the heck down here in? And that's not happening. So not only do I hope the judge's ruling holds up, it's going to turn into a court case where they'll come up with a definitive ruling. So in the meantime, I have noticed that there are ice raids that have started up in other states. So I think this is what they're doing is they're testing every state. They're just bouncing around. So all you people out there, fight back and stop these ice raids, and keep up the pressure on the Epstein files, and keep praying for those puffy ankles and the bruised skin. Let's see some more symptoms.
Do you know the important differences between a Mexican migrant worker and a South African migrant worker? Let's talk about it. First, let's talk about where they come from. Did you know that Mexican people had half of their land taken by the United States? I'm amazed that people don't know this, but think of every city in the United States, Southwest, that has a Spanish name. That used to be Mexico. You know how Trump is saying he wants to take Greenland, how he wants to annex Canada? That's essentially what the United States did to much of Mexico. We have California, Wyoming, Nevada, Utah, Arizona, parts of Wyoming. I can't even remember all of them. Sometimes Mexican people like to say, we didn't cross the border crossed us. Now let's talk about where South African people come from. The people who are coming here as migrants were colonizers in South Africa. And during the apartheid system, black people had their citizenship taken away from them, and the country was run by white colonizers. Black people were sent to live in ghettos and Bantustans where they had no legal rights and lived very harsh lives without dignity until there was a revolution and apartheid was overthrown in rather recent history, I think like in the late 80s. Now that white people no longer control South Africa, many of these migrants feel that they want to live somewhere else. And Donald Trump and Elon Musk are here to welcome them. Now let's talk about benefits. You know, like free housing, food, shelter, things like that. Mexican people, Mexican workers, although we see them everywhere, picking our fruits and vegetables, working in restaurants, taking care of our elders, doing construction, doing building, the Mexican laborers have gotten zero free benefits, zero free housing, zero free food stamps, zero free Section 8, because they have been undocumented workers, working here under the radar, not because they wanted to, but because the rich people didn't want to fix the immigration system so they could pay them cheaper. But they did give many of the day laborers Social Security numbers that were not good for anything but helping them to pay taxes into the system here. So yes, they've been paying into the system, but not getting any benefits. Now let's talk about the South Africans. They'll be here under refugee status, so they will be entitled to housing, food support, whatever someone on a low income level is entitled to in the state where they live, they will be entitled to it. And perhaps more. I don't know what the deal is that Donald Trump has set up for them, but they will be like the Venezuelan people that were here. The Venezuelan people also had a protected status. They were here legally because the United States had caused with sanctions, starvation, and, a humanitarian crisis in the United States attempts to throw out a so-called socialist government the United States didn't like. So the South African immigrants will get these benefits that MAGA people like to talk a lot about. But understand, the Mexican day laborers, the Mexican migrant workers never received these benefits, but paid into the system. These are just things that, no matter what your opinion on immigration is, that I wish all American people, all United States citizens, I just wish people understood that.
U.S. history didn't teach you this, but I will. There was a time when the United States was begging Mexicans to come over the border, not to deport them, but to pay them. It was called the Bracero program, and it started in 1942 during World War II. With American men off fighting overseas, the United States was desperate for labor. So what did they do? They made a deal with Mexico. Send us your workers, your braceros, and we'll pay them to harvest our crops, lay our railroads, and literally keep our entire economy running. Over 4 million contracts were signed to fill these labor shortages. These workers literally saved the U.S. economy. But like nearly every chapter in U.S. history, especially involving immigrants, these men were exploited. Wages were stolen, living conditions were brutal, many were never paid what they were promised. So if you hear somebody say, go back to where you came from, remind them, the United States once invited Mexicans over, in fact begged them to come, needed them to survive, and then turned around and erased them from the history books. They built the United States economy. And when the war ended, many stayed, because they had every right to. They became a part of American communities and American families.
I don't know who needs to hear this, but if you were not born in Mexico, you're not a Mexican. If you were born in the United States of America, you're an American. Maybe your mom and dad were born over there in Mexico, but if you were born in the United States, you're an American, right? The way that it works is you would say, I am an American of Mexican descent. Because if you say that you're Mexican and you go to Mexico and they ask you, well, where were you born? And you're like, oh, I was born in California, or I was born in Texas. They're not going to claim you as Mexican. They're going to see you as an American because you weren't born there. So the proper way to say it is, I am an American of Mexican descent, right? I think people get that all wrong. It's because the Mexicans used to tell me, you're not a Mexican. If you weren't born here, you're not a Mexican. You're an American.
I feel like there's going to be an eternal feud between Mexicans from Mexico and Mexican Americans. But I'm not one to decide who's more or less Mexican. But I am here to tell you that there is some stark differences. And here are some examples. Number one is language fluency. Most Mexican Americans are not fluent in Spanish. Almost every Mexican American that I know personally either doesn't speak Spanish or speaks some sort of Spanglish. Not to say it's a bad thing, it's just the culture. Second is style. And this one's really hard to explain. I don't want to make anybody mad or offend anybody, but the best way I can explain it is Mexicans never go out of the house without being dressed, hair done, makeup done, looking very clean, very polished. Mexican Americans tend to look a little bit more casual. They don't really dress up to go to the grocery store or to run errands. It's more of a special occasion kind of thing. Third is that Mexicans from Mexico tend to be a little bit more conservative, whereas Mexican Americans tend to be a little bit more progressive. Fourth is that I feel like Mexican Americans always tend to feel the need to overcompensate. Like if they don't listen to Mexican music all the time, they're not Mexican enough. Or if they don't dress up in boots and hats, then they're not Mexican enough. Even amongst each other, Mexican Americans are always trying to prove that they're Mexican enough. Fifth is that Mexican Americans in their majority have very strong Latin features, like the brown skin, the dark hair. Whereas Mexico, it's kind of a hodgepodge. There is a people that look like what you expect a Mexican to look like, and then there's Mexicans that look Asian and Mexicans that look white. But I rarely run into Mexican Americans in the US that don't have the stereotypical Latin features. Again, I want to clarify, there is no hate in this video. I'm not saying one is more Mexican than the other. These are just observations that I've made from both of these cultures. And I would love to know if there's any observations that you've made.
Americans see undocumented immigration as rule breakers. Mexicans see it differently. This isn't about politics, it's about cultural perspective driven by religion. In the US, law equals morality. If it's illegal, it's wrong. Doesn't matter why, it doesn't matter who. But in Mexico, intent matters more than rules. If your heart is in the right place and no one is harmed, it's not a crime. And here's the driver. Protestant cultures like the US are built on discipline over compassion, rules over relationship, individual responsibility above all. Catholic cultures, like Mexico, are the opposite. Intent is more important than the letter of the law, and family more important than bureaucracy. Redemption over punishment. The same actions have a different moral system. In America, undocumented status justifies family separation. In Mexico, there's no higher value than family, not even the law. In the US, a pregnant woman gets handcuffed for looking suspicious. In Mexico, a mother who stole to feed her baby might be scolded, probably not arrested. Americans seek chaos without rules. Mexicans seek cruelty without compassion. One system values discipline. The other values humans. The divide isn't political, it's cultural.
She just smacked around Donald Trump, and I mean smacked him around good. Because Donald Trump put the word out that, yeah, we're going to be doing tariffs against Canada and Mexico. And she said, hey, by the way, before you start running your mouth, I think you should know the problems we have because of you. Namely, all the guns that are brought in from the United States to Mexico. Yeah, those guns aren't ours. They're yours. And you keep bringing them into Mexico, and we don't want that. And oh yeah, the drug problem you're having, that's your problem specifically. Yeah, you guys seem to like fentanyl and opiates. Yeah, the white trash that votes for you seems to really like that drug. Yeah, so if you want to complain about fentanyl, you better go to the white trash voters of yours that voted for you in office, because it's not a Mexican problem. It's not a black or brown person problem. It seems to be a white trash problem. Hence, your voters.
100 Mexicans versus 100 blacks. Who wins? How about 100 Mexicans and 100 blacks come together and open up 100 businesses? Why does the internet have to be so damn divisive?
Here are 3 ways that Mexico is more progressive than the US that you may not have heard about. While in the United States, Roe versus Wade has been recently overturned and it's more difficult than ever to get an abortion, Mexico's Supreme Court has federally decriminalized abortion. That means that safe and legal abortion is available in every single state across Mexico. Even if it is banned in that specific state, you can get a safe and legal abortion in federal hospitals throughout the entire country. The ruling also prohibits employees at these facilities from being penalized for carrying out abortions. Number 2. So by now you've probably heard that Mexico just elected its first female presidenta. But did you also know that her runner-up is also a woman? Here we have the Presidenta of Mexico, Claudia Sheinbaum, and here was her runner-up, Xochitl Galvez Ruiz. Now, both women are highly educated, smart women. Claudia is a PhD, she's a climate scientist, and Xochitl is also a wildly successful engineer, prominent businesswoman, promoter of indigenous rights, and senator. Now we know that both the United States and Mexico have issues with childhood obesity. However, in Mexico, 2 states have actually taken steps and they've banned the sale of sugary drinks, candy, and soda to minors. So children in both Oaxaca and Tabasco cannot purchase these items without an adult present, and other states are considering doing the same. Let me know if you're interested in a part 2.
Guys, one thing I noticed when I come back to the States is that almost every major city here in the States has like a major homeless problem / drug epidemic in their inner cities. Literally almost every city has it here in the States. Whereas in Mexico, their downtowns are like booming with markets and activities and events and stuff. It's definitely interesting for sure.
U.S. citizens are being denied entry into Mexico. Check out this video.
Today we're in Mexico, they're not letting us in.
No, todos los que son nacidos en Estados Unidos traen un pasaporte, sí o sí pasaporte.
Today we're walking into Mexico and we're getting denied entry. Check it out.
Tienen que traer pasaporte cuando tienen que traer un pasaporte, sí o sí pasaporte, porque las
Pero ya cambió con el Trump, ¿verdad?
Sí.
Que el Trump cambió todo, so ustedes ya es más difícil, ¿verdad?
Sí.
And this is exactly why I've been telling you guys again and again to get your dual citizenship. I have never gotten a visa in my life. I have never paid to go into Mexico. I know nothing about that. I've been hearing rumors that Mexico is going to start asking people visiting from the US for visas to enter Mexico. There's no reason why you shouldn't have a Mexican passport in 2025. It's literally free and it's never been easier. I mean, but if you guys are okay with continuously having to pay fees to go into Mexico, having to get visas, that's your problem. You can lead a horse to the water, but you can't make it drink. But anyways, let me know what you guys think.